Special session of the Garrett County Board of Education to order. And the first item that we have is the approval of the agenda, which is in front of you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? So moved. Motion by Mr. Woods, second by Ms. Seabold. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
As opposed, nay. It is approved. For our closed the session, I'm having a hard time with that word today, but for the summaries of our closed sessions from our March 12th meeting, those will be in the minutes for this meeting. They'll be read at our next regular scheduled meeting in April. Move on now to the planning process as we look at the strategic facilities plan. The first item is to approve the contract for Educational Facilities Planning LLC, which was sent to the board members and is on board docs. So as you recall, we did the bid process for the Strategic Facilities Plan. We received 2 responses. One of those responses was actually incomplete. The other response was from Educational Facilities LLC, which is represented by David Lever. We accepted that proposal at the last meeting, and then Brandon Hoover, our board attorney, completed this contract. Is there a motion to approve the contract?
So moved. Second.
Been moved by Mr. Woods, so we'll give a second to Mr. Gladfeldy. And any further discussion or comments on that?
No.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The contract is approved. So, Dr. Lever, welcome. If you'd like to come over here. We're thankful to have Dr. Lever with us, and we'll do a few introductions. He's been meeting with some of the staff members, but make sure to meet the ones that are here and also for our board members. So we'll just start around the table. Say hello to Dr. Lever and anything else you want to say by word of introduction.
Welcome, Dr. Lever. We're glad to be working with you. My name is Charlotte Seabold, and I've been on the board for a lot of years now. And we've met before, and thank you very much for being here with us.
My name is Monica Rinker, and I also want to welcome you along this journey that we'll be doing, and thank you.
Barbara Baker, Superintendent, Garrett County Schools. Welcome. And some of my staff have been meeting with you, and you have several more meetings scheduled for tomorrow. So welcome and thank you, and let us know if there's anything you need.
Matthew Paul, we have met and conversed and looking forward to this process, working together.
I'm Tom Woods, and again, welcome to you too as well. I worked at Southern High School for 31 years, so I'm familiar with most of the schools in Garrett County. So hopefully that we'll be able to solve some of our problems.
Good morning. My name's Rodney Gladfeldy. I'm the newest member of the board. I too am really pleased that you're going to be able to provide us your expertise in getting us through this facilities plan and hopefully coming up with a framework for the future work.
Hi there, I'm Karen DeBoer. I'm the Executive Director of Curriculum Instruction and Administration, and I enjoyed talking with you earlier today.
And Mr. Paul asked me to introduce some of my staff that are here this afternoon. This is Scott Germain. He's our supervisor of food service. Mr. Paul Edwards, he's our director of secondary education. Mr. Rich Wazlowski, our director of transportation. Allison Schweitzer, our director of finance. Dr. Jane Wildison, our director of HR. And behind you on the other side, we have Mr. Bill Swift, our director of maintenance, operations, safety, and security. Mr. Jeff Gank, our director of IT. And then behind Mrs. DeVore, we have Mr. Jim Morris, our supervisor of assessments, and Mrs. Karen Brewer, who is my executive assistant. And also,
if I may, Mrs. Penny Proudfoot, who's director of elementary education, is in interviews, so she's coming shortly. And Heather Raybold, who is our director of special education, is in an IEP meeting, so they'll both be joining us.
and then we have several parents and grandparents here this evening as well.
And go ahead, if you'd like to say any words of introduction.
Thank you. I am pleased and honored that you selected me to lead this effort. I've been involved with Garrett County since 2003 when I entered my former position as Executive Director of the Public School Construction Program. I have visited a number of times. I've been to every one of the current schools. The only one of the schools, buildings I haven't been to is Bloomington, which is no longer in the fleet. And I have been taken on tours by 3 of your facility directors, going back to Michael Sines, Mr. Jim Thomas, and Mr. Swift, have led me around and given me a lot of insight into what's going on. Of course, I also met them down in Baltimore and Annapolis. So I have some understanding of the challenges that you face here, and I think they're very significant challenges. You've had declining enrollments, which seem to have stabilized, and I hope that that really does represent a trend. You've had the financial issues, particularly back in 2013 when we were facing a very significant financial shortfall that led to the FEA study and the recommendations that came out of that, which would, frankly, I'm glad they were not implemented, because with stabilizing enrollments and an uncertain future, we might be in a very bad position now if we had followed some of those recommendations. Not faulting FEA, I think they did a very professional job of that. You also have the age of your facilities. They've been very well maintained, but they are old facilities. You're 7th oldest in the state of Maryland by average age of square footage. I think that you are right there with Dorchester County. And so, like, as with any physical asset, your home, your boat, your car, investment is necessary to maintain them and keep them up. We call this cost of ownership, and there are industry guidelines of what annual investment ought to be in different types of facilities. Your schools have a very strong position in the community. They are centers of community activity and community sort of life, and that is a very important consideration, I think. But however, you also face some very uneven utilization, particularly contrast, say, Friendsville Elementary School with Rockford Elementary School. One is significantly underutilized, the other is somewhat overutilized, and perhaps that will change with the enrollments. You have capacity in the north, you have a lack of capacity in the south, you have capacity at the secondary level. Your elementaries in some cases need more capacity, but it's not a simple matter to simply use capacity in that way. It would involve grade changes, grade configurations, a lot of logistic and educational implications. The school facilities are not necessarily where they should be geographically. They were probably appropriate when they were built, but you can't just move a facility to where you need it. And so you have that problem, and that has transportation impacts. The net effect of all of these factors, I think, is equity. Equity in educational program to make sure that every child has the educational program that is appropriate and that no child is being disadvantaged because of where they happen to be living, where they're born, and so forth. So it is a major issue, and I've seen any number of solutions brought forward by school systems around the state facing somewhat similar situations. And you're very familiar with these. You've seen these recommendations before, or plans: redistricting, consolidation, school closures, grade reconfiguration to better utilize existing capacity, programs involving voluntary redistricting, using programs to attract students to schools which may be underutilized, and also to bring into the school system new programs that it may not have had before. Capital projects can always involved in this kind of thing, whether it's renovation of existing facilities, whether it's additions, whether it's in some cases new facilities that are needed. And then a role for information technologies, which I think we're just at the beginning of really understanding the relationship between information technologies and education in terms of, say, distance learning, and how that might help a rural district like Garrett to address some of its concerns. And I certainly don't pretend to have an answer there. I think that I don't have enough background in that particular area, but I think it is one that's worth exploring. So this points to, I think, the need for a comprehensive plan, which is right at the beginning of this process, a roadmap going forward, recommendations coming out of it that I think should be ambitious but realistic. They can be implemented, and a methodology for implementing them as well, a time frame, information about costs, what kinds of resources are needed, what kinds of problems are actually going to be raised by implementation. The real question behind all this is what does the community, what does the board want the school system to look like in 5 to 10 years? What's the vision for the future? And then work towards that. Obviously, some issues are going to be very urgent. They have to be addressed right away. Other issues need a good deal of deliberation going forward. I'm very glad to see that the committee that has been appointed, or is in the process of being appointed, is really a community, represents the community, the different geographic areas, and the different needs within the community, as well as having expertise from the school system that's involved in terms of transportation, education, facilities. I think this is a good balance, but it also, I think, the recommendations that come out of such a committee will carry a great deal of legitimacy because it'll be the voice of the committee really speaking through the committee. It provides communication with the community. Things that are being talked about in the committee can be then talked about with the community back home to see how people react. So there's a much more direct line of communication then. And I think the process that I proposed, and it appears that you've accepted, will get us through that. So it's basically 6 stages. It involves a stage of research and information gathering. I've already started that through the discussions I'm having, and then the committee, an informational workshop that we would set up hopefully for April 18th. And then community listening sessions, North County, South County, and Central County. Let the community speak about its concerns, its observations on the school system and what it wants. Simply listen. Just take this information in, but take account of it as we're developing our planning options and recommendations. Third phase of developing planning objectives and the list of planning options. And the objectives part is extraordinarily important because this is where you really express the technical needs, but also the values are expressed, the values of the community. And one of the things that, in my experience, I've seen is that planning objectives that on their own seem perfectly worthy and can stand, and everybody more or less agrees with them, may be in conflict with other objectives. And I think that a situation is represented very clearly in the high school configuration you have here, and I've seen this also in other jurisdictions, where the disparities of enrollment have educational implications, and the desire to sort of balance enrollments may run right up against the problem of redistricting and where the district lines would be drawn and whether the community wants those district lines drawn that way. So two values that are both very important may actually be in conflict with one another. And the only way out of this is really to have a good discussion about how do we prioritize these different objectives? What is important to the community? And that would be true for other issues as well. And then the notion that as part of that same phase, developing planning options. And my own view is that everything should be thrown on the table, that no ideas are too wild or too strange to be discussed, and even strange and odd ideas can provide something for the more expectable ideas, say, provide input into it. But that way, everything is brought forward, and then out of that, using the planning objectives, using what the board itself has stated in terms of the values you've expressed, what we've heard from the community, prioritize this list of options. In Carroll County, we had something like 12 different options that we were looking at one point. That's obviously far too many. Can't bring that to the board. But it's a beginning point, and then based on planning objectives and the other factors, narrow it down to, let's say, the 3 or 4 most critical options, and then do a much deeper level of research into those. What are the educational implications? What are the facility implications? Do you need space expansion? Do you need renovation to handle these proposals? What are the demands on operational resources, for instance, on transportation, on staffing, hours of operation, heating and cooling issues that might come up, very practical issues. What are the costs involved? And this can be very difficult because some costs are fairly readily obtainable. Capital costs, for instance. There's a lot of experience in estimating capital costs under certain assumptions. Operational costs is much harder because you have to know what the proposal is before you can really get into detailed examination of, say, transportation routing or staffing implications. And so we might have some ballpark ideas about that, relative costs, but not necessarily the precision that would give the kind of guidance that actually the board would certainly like to have. But we have to see how that shakes out. And issues like racial and ethnic diversity just surface in some areas. Then we move from that as we have a more narrow list of high priority options. Go back to the community and get feedback. Hear what the community has to say. What are the community reactions? What additional observations or inputs do they have into these proposals now that they have a certain level of concreteness to them? And that becomes part of the process also. That gets incorporated into the final recommendations, the final report. It's part of the evaluation. And it might actually change the options. We don't know until we actually go through that process. And in the recommendations, we're going to state the assumptions that we have in terms of funding, in terms of the timeline, talk about the implications from the staffing perspective and the resources perspective, and show them in priority order. It may be that there will be a single recommendation, it may be that there will be a list of prioritized recommendations that will be presented to the board, and then it becomes the board's decision how to proceed from that point forward. So this is a kind of a very broad outline of the process that I think that we would be using. In this, I would have the role as facilitator, which means helping to organize this process, keeping it on track, facilitating communication among the members and between the committee and the board at appropriate points, fielding questions from the community that need responses and helping to develop those responses. We would ideally, the recommendations that come out from the committee will be the committee's recommendations, not my recommendations. They would represent recommendations from the community to its Board of Education. I assume in terms of our meetings, I have 6 more visits planned to Garrett County. We would have face-to-face meetings, and all those visits will use every electronic device we can get our hands on for communication, if it's Skype or telecommunication. And I'll be depending a great deal on staff, on Ms. Brewer over there, to help organize these things, to get the scheduling right, and to set up all the communication devices. There's a gang here will be a great assistance to. I am not the most technically proficient person in the room. I can promise you that, but I'll do my best. But I do think that face-to-face is very important, and once you develop those kinds of face-to-face communications, telecommunication becomes much, much easier. And it's also understood. These are people with very busy schedules. They're parents, they have games to go to and meetings of their own and their own families to look after. Not everybody can attend every meeting, but I hope that we do see a good number of people at the meetings. And particularly when we go out to meet the public, when we go to the community meetings, I hope that we get good representation from the committee. I found that that's very important for the people in the audience to be able to say, here are our friends and neighbors, and they're listening to us. They really can hear what we have to say. So really, I think that's the process I have in mind, and I hope that the product from all this will provide you with the information you need to be able to move forward and to make good decisions over the following years. Some of the recommendations probably will have a level of urgency related to facility conditions that should be addressed right away. Some of them will be much more general and long-term.
Thank you very much for that rundown. Do you have questions about the process or things you would like clarified at this point?
Well, brief question. This sounds like a wonderful opportunity for the community and everything to give input on where we need to go. I think a lot of work has been done on facilities in the last 3 or 4 years, and you participated on some of that, so we know where repairs need to be made on some of the facilities, and we have estimates on the cost and those type things. Once a plan is presented to the board, you have to understand that the board is just one of the components in the community. We also have to get funding for it somehow,
Yes.
Whether that funding comes from the state or from the local government. And so how do you how do you propose to work with county government or state government to try to help us come up with some funding to do the necessary things that we need to do?
Right. Well, I'm very happy that you have the county manager is on the committee, so we have a direct line of communication. As part of the presentations, we'll be hearing about the county budget, so I think that's a very important area of understanding to have. But, you know, if projects are presented that have a level of urgency, and I think that you say these projects really need to be done, good cost estimating is critical. You know, what all the funding sources are in for, what they should expect. My own sense is that the state would be extremely receptive to funding projects from Garrett County, because it has not heard a lot from Garrett County for major projects since Northern Middle School was done, and there have been other projects along the way. And, you know, it's the mission of the public school construction program, equity of facilities across the state. And, you know, the only way to get to that is by investment that really carries out these projects. So I think the state will be very
The elephant in the room, though, is the funding formula that has it at 50% for county, state matched. And I don't know how these extrinsic factors, like what's being debated now by the legislature, the additional money that's going to go into school construction in the future, how can Garrett County best access those funds? So I hope that all is part of the things that you're going to be looking into.
Yes, I'm in regular communication with the public school construction program, you know, for various purposes. And I'm also in communication with ASBO, the Association of School Business Officials, Maryland, D.C., that is involved in this, and MAPE, the Maryland Association of Boards of Education. So, you know, I am on top of the legislative process and how things are coming out. We won't know until the end of session, frankly. I mean, many of these decisions are made literally on the last day, and we don't know until the next day exactly how things are
Well,
shaping.
these things are all going to be happening during the time that you're doing the study, though, so, you know, we'll have to get that information pulled in, I think.
Yes, we will. But we'll have those results in terms of funding fairly quickly as we're just beginning this process. Now, what comes out of the Kirwan Commission, that's a whole different story. I've seen the recommendations. The price tag is very, very high. I don't know how much the General Assembly is going to support. It could have big implications. Issues like they're already doing full-day pre-kindergarten, so you're ahead on that. There could be implications in terms of career technology. You have to see the pathways process that they're outlining. I just don't know. And I don't think people in Annapolis necessarily know at this point either.
Right.
But if this process runs its course and you receive the recommendations on November 12th, you won't be in line to submit projects for the FY 2021 capital improvement program. But you would be in line to submit the next year if there are major capital projects like roof replacement and so forth that come out of this process as recommendations that you adopt. So there would be time to really put together the proposals very well and then go forward with, you know, good proposals and go through the process. So I'm hoping that that would be successful. And I think a great deal depends then on the match from the local government. And does the local government see the plan that comes out of this as the plan that they're interested in, that they want to have, that then will support their investing into the capital programs?
Yeah, I think that's key.
It is key. And I do see that as a major objective of this whole planning process.
Okay, thank you.
I think you mentioned the fact that our funding changed, and that was the last time we actually got to work on Northern Middle School, is when we were at the 75-25, or before it went to the 50-50. And also about the same time or so, we were being grandfathered in for students, as you know, that we didn't have in the system anymore. We were just like, okay, you have this many students, so we'll send you the money. But then we started dropping students like 100 a year. So at one point, we were at we lost $4 million that we were running the schools with. So I think we've made a great comeback from there because there hasn't been a lot of help, but you know the counties helped us like they could. So I think that we are pretty resilient, and that hopefully we can look at what the community how they feel. And I mean, I think we found out a lot of that by the SWOT analysis, which we were fortunately have already gone through that process, which has made us closer with the community, I feel. But there's been a lot of things that weren't real good for us that have happened, and it just seemed like it happened, at one time. So I think we have absorbed that and look forward to moving forward, and appreciate what has been done in the past to bring us to where we are now.
Well, I'm hoping that there will be a healthy amount of statewide funding for school construction over the next couple of years. And if you have a good plan in place and you have projects, eligible projects that are well conceived, that you'll be able to access that state money. The 50-50 split on eligible items, I don't know what we can do about that.
Right.
But there are other programs that are in place, like the Security Initiative that was approved in 2018, and it does have a renewal this year. I understand that nothing's been finalized, but I think that's coming. There are the Aging Schools program, quite small amounts, but very critical amounts, and that doesn't require local match.
Right.
It's very beneficial in that way, and the application process is very fluid on that.
Right.
So-
And those have helped us. The Aging School has been a savior
Yeah.
of a lot of different facilities for us. So.
We regret, I think everybody regrets that the QSAP program is not operative this year.
Yeah.
Last year, that was a very good program, and some school systems use it very, very efficiently. So not much we can do about that. That's federal. That's not state. So
Right.
we'll do about that.
Thank you.
Any other specific questions? You brought up the SWOT analysis. I think it is helpful that in Dr. Lever's proposal, he certainly has shown that in our discussions that he's reviewed the information that came through the prior steps in our planning process. He understands the values that the board outlined back in 2017 and looked through the goals and through the SWOT analysis with the RISE plan and those steps. And so I think that familiarity will be very beneficial moving forward with this process. And he understands the expectations that we have and has reviewed all those in his proposal. Has been very thorough in that way, and we'll have all that online too for everyone to review, so they can take a look at that. But yeah, basically, as you know, we're going to be looking for this plan with the recommendations. With the two key things of community support and data-driven, which are the two things that he has really touched on here today, that will give us a detailed policy and capital decisions, at least for the next 5 years, but hopefully a vision for beyond that as well. And that's kind of what we're looking at. The timeline, as outlined and he alluded to, will be November 12th was when we would hope to actually adopt these. So that would be working in starting here in the next couple of weeks with committee work, and then looking at community sessions probably in May, around the 21st of May, in that range. And then they'd be working throughout the summer and come back in the fall with some recommendations to the community in September. And then hopefully by October have something to present to the board. And we've discussed that throughout this process, the committee will be doing its work and will allow them to do that work with integrity, to look at all the options as Dr. Lever has indicated here. But they will report back to the board periodically to let us know the status of their work. And that's kind of our expectation, but we're going to let them kind of do their work and with our support, and do it to the best that they can with the information that they're able to obtain and the input that they're able to obtain from the community.
He'd be coming back to us at some point and talking to us about what our objectives are. Is there a meeting set up to sort of a...
It would be the regular reporting, and we'll have to work out a schedule for that. At the moment, I'm working off the values and the expectations that were expressed through the documents that were released in December.
Okay.
But there'd be plenty of opportunity, I think, for interchange and for you to express, for the board to express what its expectations are. And so I work to do that.
Not necessarily expectations, but input as to...
I think that he certainly will be accessible to us, and if there's input that you have to send, I think we can communicate that. If you want to communicate either through me and I can pass it on, or whatever the best process is for you.
Right.
But I think that the board is not actually on the committees itself, so the committee will be doing its work kind of independently, but reporting back to us.
Right.
The idea.
There may be questions that I can answer myself. There might be questions I would have to take to the committee, and we'd have some discussion about it, then respond. But I think that it would be very fluid communication.
Now, when they do regular reporting, will that be like at a board meeting, probably, instead of having a special meeting?
I would assume most of that will be through our regular monthly board meetings that we have throughout the summer. There might be a need when we get to the time to present the recommendations. We might need to do more of a special type of meeting. But
If you would like to have status updates every month, that would be fun.
Okay.
That would be good.
Just tell us where we stand, what events have taken place, what we see as next steps. That would be fun. I don't see a problem with that at all.
That'd be good.
And then I believe, our November 12th is our board meeting for the month, correct?
correct. That is our regularly scheduled November meeting. And so, yep. So we really invite the community to be part of the listening sessions in particular, and to be looking out for that. And we'll really focus on being aggressive with our press releases and
Absolutely, we
information
talked about
to
that, yes.
be out there.
We also have discussed with how we can set up an online forum
Yes.
that would allow community members to put in their observations, raise questions, have comments, and so forth. So along the way, if people can't attend the meetings, or if they feel like the meetings they can't quite express what they want to say, they have an opportunity to do that. That all becomes part of a record. That all becomes information that we'll take into account as we're moving forward with this process.
Yeah, and so that, I haven't talked to you yet, but we would like a special place on the website for the strategic facilities plan that will have all the documents, and then a place for that input. So that we'll make sure we get that out to the community as well.
Now, when they are at the communities, will that be recorded, or? Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So recorded, and then minutes, and we'll work out the logistics on that, but minutes that would be prepared, and then those would also be available once they're approved by the committee online.
Right. And my assumption is that as a committee or a board, that the planning committee would be subject to the open meetings requirements, which means public can attend.
Right.
And then we have to figure out how we do that in terms of, say, when we have teleconference and so forth. I know there are ways to do that, but we just have to work through the logistics of that as well.
Okay, so that's the process itself and kind of goals and understanding of that. The next item was to look at some special considerations that you might want to consider. Is there any areas there that you would like to draw attention to under that?
Well, I think we've kind of touched on them, really. If there's anything that you all would like to sort of mention as a special concern, you mentioned communication and the funding, clearly very important considerations. Very aware of the conversations that I've had about transportation and the kind of unique circumstances that you face in Garrett County because of the land configuration, the size of the jurisdiction. The more detail I learn, the more challenging it seems, actually. So it's actually quite amazing that it works. Every day it works. Maybe some people don't think so. But those are, very unique and special kinds of issues that I think have to be taken into account with any recommendation that's made here. Also, your geographic location in terms of capital. I'm much more familiar with the capital markets and how things operate around the Washington-Baltimore corridor, somewhat on the eastern shore. But you have such unique circumstances out here. I was very much involved in the bidding process for Allegheny High School replacement, and I can see what they went through, and also previously on Mountain Ridge. And it's a completely different market out here. It's a completely different situation. So what that might mean in terms of when we put together our cost estimates, schedules, and so forth, I need a lot of feedback from people who actually live with this in this community. as opposed to any assumptions I might live with me from the Central Maryland area. Different. Very different. Weather conditions and how that affects, timelines and so forth. All of that's important, I think.
Yeah, one of the special considerations, obviously, that you're aware of that we face is because of the ruralness, each of our schools is a very important part of that community. They are the YMCAs. They are the Boys and Girls Clubs. They provide everything for that community. So that becomes a unique situation for us in that they play a role that perhaps in an urban area wouldn't be needed, but in our area it's vastly needed.
Right. And that is actually a role that the state is very supportive of, which it provides funding for that up to a certain amount in terms of capital, but it also, it really encourages that kind of joint use with nonprofits, with local government, church groups, and so forth. To get full utilization out of the capital investment, but also, as you say, to make the school very much a part of the community, kind of a central node of the community. And I can see that from my tour of the schools back in 2013, and more recently conversations in the schools I've seen, that the schools really are central to the identity of the communities here. It's a very important kind of consideration, I think.
I have another question for you. This time, will you be going around and seeing all of our schools, including Hickory and Dennett Road facilities?
Yes, I will.
Because I've heard some of the community ask to make sure that
Oh, yeah.
you would, and I said, yes, I'm sure that's part of our, that's part of it, yes.
And I'll obviously be talking to Mr. Swift a great deal about this, Mr. Zimmerman, but also custodians and building engineers, and just saying, what are the problems? What are the issues that you're dealing with here? We learn so much from communication that you just don't find any document. Right? I have been to the schools, but that was 6 years ago, and things have changed, and I need to see what the conditions are now.
And when you're talking to the one that deals with it on a daily basis, that makes a different perspective also.
That's right. And this would not be a facility condition assessment. That's
Right.
a wholly different thing. This would be sort of a roughly average 2-hour walkthrough. Try to see what the conditions are, learn about the problems and the issues, and have that be part of a sort of comprehensive view. Now, one of the questions for the committee members is that they want to tour schools as well. It's a big commitment of time. It takes a great deal of time. Their schedules may not allow for it. Some of them, of course, will know the schools very, very well in their own community. But that also is a way to get first-hand information.
I think that's a good suggestion.
If we can
It's very
manage
good.
it.
I just finished visiting every school in Garrett County, and I can't tell you how impressed I was with each and every single one of them, and the importance that they have for the communities where they are located, and the quality education that the kids are really receiving in each one of those schools. It's amazing.
Yes, it is.
And if you haven't been there in 6 years, you'll probably see some major changes.
Okay.
Another thing I think we need to be aware of is the debt that is owed, especially through Johnson Controls. You do that to try to save on your money for your schools, but you also also have a debt, and that comes back to the county if you leave that facility. Otherwise, the state pays. So that was when we moved out of Dennett Road. We found out that was the situation. Fortunately, we were able to convert that building into a facility that we needed, and that has worked out. But that's also a big possibility. I mean, we've done a lot of work at Accident and other schools through Johnson Controls.
That's right. And if the debt isn't paid off, if it's within 15 years, then that money is owed back to the state. Right. So I understand that issue, and it's very important.
Right.
It's a financial consideration.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
There's a consideration, and I think it's very important, is on what we call the specials, special education, alternative education, and career and technology education, maybe other programs as well, the STARS program, alternative education. How are they distributed regionally? Are the facilities that house those programs, are they suited to the specific needs of the children? What is the trend? What do you see as the future for the populations, and will the facilities be adequate to address those kinds of issues in the future? Do you need to be preparing for that now, or is there a way that you can react as the situation develops? That has to be taken into account as well.
Any other thoughts?
We've already mentioned transportation, time that students are on the bus,
Right.
the fact that we're the second largest county, and you wouldn't believe some of the places, the kids, how far away they are. So thoughts on that, because that is family time, that, they could be with their family, that we've got them on the buses. So how we have to figure out how to weigh that out. And how the community feels about it.
Right. When I read the FEA report, and they were talking about up to 90 minutes, and since your buses are pre-K to 12, as small as children are, 90 minutes on a bus is really almost impossible.
Two times a day.
I'm sorry?
2 times a day.
2 times a day. No,
Right.
that's right. Is that really something that the community would accept? Is that really good for the children, family life, for education? Takes a good deal of time from education. So
Right.
those are extremely important consideration. And I think that, that by itself became a good reason why certain recommendations were not adopted.
Right.
Among other reasons as well.
So, yeah, we appreciate your review of some of the previous studies that have been done, and
Yes.
some of the acknowledgement of the work there, and I hope that certainly this process will be one in which we'll have full transparency and community support, and work through and come to some things. We might have to make some hard decisions, but at least we can do that based on the values and priorities of the community, and where they see our school system heading in the next few years.
The process is never easy.
Yeah.
Decisions are never easy. There's always high costs involved in one form or another. Say time factors, impacts on communities, actual fiscal costs, whether it's operating, whether it's capital. But decisions also become unavoidable. It's sort of the obligation that goes with having a school system, and seeing how important the school system is in terms of the life of the community, the economic future of the community, the welfare of the kids, their own futures. So I'm very, very happy to be participating in this, and I hope that I can do a good job, give you something that's useful.
Thank you. And as far as the public too, I mean, one of the things that we were, just as far as speaking to Dr. Lever's credentials, I mean, your resume speaks for itself, so that's very impressive, which will be online. But with this work that he's done for Kent County recently, submitted that, and Carroll County, and very thorough, and so we're looking forward to that work here as well. All right.
I do have a question.
go ahead.
Thinking, we talk about our communities and we'll get community input. Now, how will that be? Will that be like several schools? Will it be like something at the northern end, or or that'll come out in the committee deciding on?
The committee has to finalize it, but my recommendation would be that there be 3 listening sessions, North County, Central County, and South County.
Okay.
This would be about the 3rd week of May 21st, likely. And a process that works is to give a brief presentation of just overview of facts having to do with the county, the enrollment situation, the facilities, the number of facilities, the condition of the facilities, the capital investment situation, fairly brief, and then open mic, just listen and have, hopefully people stay within the time frame.
Right.
But let everybody have a chance to talk who wants to talk, and, record this, recorded meetings. No, it's not really responding at those
Right.
meetings. We just want to gather information. So that becomes the first set of forums. And then once we have the draft recommendations, kind of list of options, go back out to the community. This would be after school is back in session, about 3 weeks afterwards, so things have a chance to settle down a little bit. And present these to the community. Same thing, North County, Central County, South County, 3 sessions, so that people will hopefully always find an opportunity.
Right,
Go
right.
one evening one location works for them. And also record those so that if people can't come, they can see what the discussion was, see what any presentations that were given, and then incorporate that information into our deliberations as we're presenting the final recommendations. So that would be the general process.
So then I guess as soon as the date is set, it would be good to put it even on the part on the website that we'll have so people can mark it into their calendar to attend one of the 3 options. That would be.
And have members of the committee at each of these community sessions as well. But we can't finalize the dates until I get together with the community.
Right. But I'm sure this is the question people are asking, like.
Sure.
And we'll do some aggressive press releases with that and social media and all the channels that can use to get that. Okay. Anything else? Any staff members have questions or anything that we can clarify for you? Okay. All right. Our next order of business then is discussion surrounding the planning committee. I have, through this process, we have gathered nominations from the board, and we consulted with Dr. Lever on the makeup of what he felt would work well for a committee and certain groups that he would make sure to be represented. And so through this process, the board submitted nominations and as well as the superintendent. And we took those nominations and I tried my best to try to get, very hard work there, try to get as many of these communities represented and as many folks from different sectors represented as well on the committee. I'll read the names, but first, is there any general discussion on the committee or anything that you want to clarify there?
I think everybody did a great job on the nominations, and you did a great job actually limiting it to 13.
Hey, it's outstanding, as I said, I think in my email to you. The people there are people that are the bedrock of the communities throughout the county. Every part of the county is being represented by people who have a vested interest in our educational system. So I think you'll find that that's a committee that will be very easy to work with.
And we followed somewhat Dr. Lever's guideline too, that you have different areas represented too, which kind of helped us along the way.
So the proposed committee, and Bill had this out, and we'll be confirming some of these might be subject to confirmation based on their availability as possible approval. But this is the proposed committee as of today, and we'll work through that. Brian Bull, parent in the southern area. Nancy Brady, community member from Kitzmiller. Patrick Damon, president of the Garrett County Education Association and teacher. Karen DeVore, our executive director of curriculum instruction and administration. Stephen Kaufman, general manager at CN Metals. David Lever, of course, will be our facilitator. Tracy Miller, the principal at Grantsville. Chris Rodeheaver, the president and CEO of First United Bank and Trust. Kevin Nall, Garrett County administrator. Jennifer Paul, advocate for student with disabilities, and no relation to me. Nathan Sorber, parent from the northern area. William Swift, our director of facilities, maintenance, operations, and security. Rich Wazlowski, there he is, director of transportation. And Dwayne Yoder, president of the Garrett County Community Action Committee. Okay.
And I believe we've heard from most of them that they're willing to serve. There's a couple that we still need to confirm.
They're still a little murky, but
They're checking their calendars.
but I think that's pretty set. But is there a motion to approve or this? Motion by Charlotte. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Roddy. He had his hand up.
Yeah.
Further discussion. Anything you want to discuss any further on that? Yeah.
But you have some good backups.
Yes, we do, and it's a hard thing with this many people, and you want to include 3 key staff from the Board of Ed, plus principals and teachers, and make sure all those groups are represented. Special education's an important area, and then try to get as many communities and schools represented as we could. So it's certainly a hard target, but we did best we could on that. All right. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. It's approved. So we have a working committee at this point, and so Dr. Lever will be getting with them to set up their first meeting, so be looking for that. And any further business or discussion items?
I just want to emphasize how important it is that when they do have these communities where you can go to the north, south, or central, for everybody to come and listen. You'll learn a lot, and to give your input. It's very important, and we value it. And we are waiting for all the information presented to us.
I think the central part of the county is going to just be a catch-all, so the people from the southern
Right.
end and the northern end, because we really don't have a school in the central part.
And that was our
Yeah.
discussion. So we'd probably be looking at this point at the high schools or one of the schools, middle school or high school in each of the southern and northern area, and then probably a college location.
And again, like you said, even if you might live the north end and it doesn't work, you can still come to the south and speak, or central. So I think that's good. Just 3 different locations for anybody to come. Doesn't matter where you live in the community.
And it's likely be evening, 6:30 range, based on the committee work. Okay, that's it. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by Tom, second by Rodney. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Hey, we're done in 50 minutes.
Well, tell you what, we need to replicate this every month. Yeah, can we do this every month?
Sounds good to me. Can you hear me?
No. Oh, yeah.
It's a lot of work. It's going to be a lot of work.